Have you ever felt just completely bewildered by modern dating? Maybe frustrated or even just plain exhausted by it all? Well, you are definitely not alone. We're always told it's about finding a better app or taking better photos. But what if the real problem isn't on our phones at all? What if it's actually hardwired inside our own heads? Let's dive into the deep, invisible forces that make finding love today so confusing.
You know the story, right? You've got your list. Must be emotionally available, financially stable, loves dogs. That's all very logical. And then you meet someone who checks, well, none of those boxes. And poof, that carefully crafted list just goes up in smoke. Hey, this isn't some kind of personal failure. It's a fundamental paradox of how our brains are actually wired.
Okay, so there's this really cool idea from behavioral economics called the hot-cold empathy gap. See, in your cold state, you're calm, you're logical. That's when you write the checklist. But when you're in a hot state, fired up by attraction and emotion, a completely different part of your brain grabs the steering wheel. It's like trying to predict how you'd act in a fire while you're sitting comfortably in an air-conditioned room. Those two brains, they barely even speak the same language.
So, keeping that basic conflict in our minds, let's turn our attention to the usual suspect, the thing we all blame for our dating problems. We are living in what you could call the fast food era of love, and it's all being driven by technology.
Welcome to the age of fast food romance. And just like fast food, it's designed to be super efficient and give you that instant gratification. It's all about getting our needs met right now, without all the slow, messy, and sometimes difficult work of really, truly integrating your life with someone else's. And look, the data really tells the story here. A massive 40% of people on these apps are just there for casual dating. Add another 24% who are looking for sex with no strings attached. So you're talking about almost 2/3 of the user base. Meanwhile, only this tiny slice, 17%, are explicitly looking for something serious. The entire system is pretty much built for this fast food culture. But here's the crazy paradox. You'd think that having more options would make us happier, right? Turns out it's the exact opposite. Psychologists have a term for it, choice overload. It's like being in an endless buffet. When you're faced with 1,000 options, you actually become less satisfied with whatever you pick. You're less likely to commit, and you're always thinking, maybe the next swipe will be even better. And that leads directly to that feeling of total exhaustion we now call dating burnout. And this whole environment, low commitment, high volume, has given us a whole new vocabulary of really toxic behaviors. Ghosting, breadcrumbing, benching. These aren't just people being rude. They're the logical and, painful results of a system that basically encourages us to treat other human beings like disposable items in an endless online catalog. But you know what? It's way too easy to just blame the apps. They're not the root cause. Think of them more like an accelerant. They're not the fire, they're the gasoline being poured on it. So let's dig a little deeper and look at the real unseen drivers behind all this. So one of these deep drivers is a concept called involution. Imagine you're on a social hamster wheel, and everyone around you is running faster and faster, competing like crazy, but the wheel itself isn't actually going anywhere. That's involution. This kind of intense pressure leads to something called time poverty. I mean, when you're using every ounce of energy you have just to stay afloat at work, a deep, time-consuming relationship can start to feel less like a joy and more like a high-risk luxury you just can't afford. And it's not just the external pressures from society. A huge part of this is our internal wiring. A lot of the behaviors we see, like emotional distance, can be traced back to something called avoidant attachment. Think of it as a defense mechanism our brains learn when we're kids. If a child learns that reaching out for comfort just leads to rejection, well, they learn to stop reaching out. And as adults, that shows up as a deep, often unconscious fear of real intimacy. Now, this requires a huge shift in how we see things. It's asking us to move away from judging people and toward a more compassionate, trauma-informed view. So that person who ghosted you, maybe they're not some malicious villain. Maybe they're a survivor, and they're just running an old program in their head that's screaming, "Getting too close is dangerous, protect yourself at all costs." So we've looked at technology, society, and our own psychology. But now we're going to go to the deepest layer of all, our biology. We're talking about the source code that runs the whole show. We need to understand the ancient programming that kicks in whenever we fall in love. Okay, here's a really crucial point. Liking and loving are not on the same spectrum. Loving is not just liking someone a whole lot. They are two completely different systems in the brain. Liking is rational. It's your head saying, I admire their qualities, we have things in common.
But loving, that's a deep, primal, biological drive for attachment and closeness. And the actual process of falling in love, it's a full-on biological takeover. First, your brain's reward engine just ignites. It floods you with dopamine, and that creates that obsessive, can't eat, can't sleep feeling of wanting. Then, and this is the wild part, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, critical part of your brain, it just goes quiet. It literally shuts down. And finally, hormones like oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, rush in to create this incredibly powerful bond. You are biologically designed to become irrational. Now, that loss of reason probably sounds like a glitch, right? A bug in the system. But from an evolutionary point of view, it's the most critical feature. This love-brain blindness creates something called the halo effect, where we just totally ignore our partner's flaws. And it serves a very specific and very ancient purpose.
All right, so now let's bring it all together. We've got the technology, the societal pressure, our own psychology, and our ancient biology. How do all of these forces collide to create the dating world we live in today? And more importantly, is our ancient wiring, our old logic, even suited for this new era?
The chaos of modern love, it's not your fault. It's the result of something called a massive evolutionary mismatch. Put simply, our brains, with their ancient wiring, are trying to operate in a world they were never, ever designed for. We're running ancient software on brand new hardware, and it's causing everything to crash.
Let's just break down this conflict. The ancient logic our brains run on was designed for one thing: survival in a small tribe. That love brain feature we talked about, its job was to forge an unbreakable bond to protect and raise children. But the modern world, it runs on a totally different operating system, one that demands individual satisfaction and constant self-improvement. And that's the core conflict. We have an ancient commitment device in our heads that's trying to function in a world that's all about disposability.
In fact, there's a name for this modern ideal. A sociologist called it the pure relationship. It's a relationship you get into just for the good feelings it provides, and it comes with a built-in exit clause. The moment it stops being satisfying, it can be dissolved. So you have to ask, how can our brains, hardwired for permanence, possibly be compatible with this new, disposable reality? So, where does that leave us? I know, it might sound a little hopeless, but just understanding the real problem is the most powerful tool you have. The solution here isn't about finding some new dating strategy. It's about adopting a whole new perspective. And here is the single most important takeaway. You cannot fight your own biology. Your love brain is a feature, not a bug. So the goal isn't to beat it, it's to become aware of it. Once you understand that your brain is designed to bond, to overlook flaws, and to seek deep connection, you can start navigating this modern world with a lot more wisdom and way less self-blame. So what does that look like in real life? Well, it means acknowledging your ancient wiring with a knowing smile instead of fighting it. It means practicing compassion and realizing that person who hurt you might just be running from their own fears. It means seeing dating apps for what they are, tools that just amplify our best and our worst tendencies. And maybe most importantly, it's about making a conscious choice to value deep connection, even when the entire world is screaming at you to be more efficient. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. Efficiency gives us fast food and next-day delivery and endless scrolling. But love, by its very nature, is inefficient. It's slow, it's messy, it's deeply irrational. In an age that worships speed and optimization, the real question isn't whether we can find love anymore. It's whether we still have the courage to make space for it.